Hey, what's going on, YouTube? Welcome back to another episode of According to the Content. Yes, I'm back with another video. I know it's kind of late. Got a lot of things going on, got a family and stuff like that. So couldn't get this video out any earlier, but get right into it. I don't want to keep you guys too long, but big news in the NBA today. If you haven't already heard, which I'm pretty sure everybody has, especially if you follow the NBA and follow teams, and just especially if you're a Denver Nuggets fan. But they have decided to fire their head coach, Mike Malone. And not only that, they've also essentially fired their general manager, Calvin Booth, by putting out a statement saying that they were not going to extend or renew his contract, thereby, letting him go, which is kind of just a weird move. The playoffs in the NBA are getting ready to start, I think, in like maybe less than 2 weeks. The play-in tournament is coming up maybe like in 10 days from now, something like that. Most teams only got about 4 to 5 games left. I think the Nuggets had about 5 games left. So it's just a big shakeup that they would fire a head coach 5 games before the NBA playoffs, and meanwhile they're on a 4 game skid. So, and then a few weeks ago, I believe the Memphis Grizzlies also fired their head coach, which was a few weeks before the playoffs as well. So, just weird happenings going on in the NBA all around. But like I said, I don't want to keep you guys too long. Let's get right into the content. So let's head over to see what ESPN had to say about everything. And I also saw a weird stat earlier. Check this out. So it looks like 4 of the last 6 coaches who won a title in the NBA, they've all been fired. Look at this. Nick Nurse from the Raptors was fired. Frank Vogel from the Lakers was fired. Mike Budenholzer from the Bucks was fired. And today, Mike Malone was fired. So that's 4 of the last 6 coaches who have won a title in the NBA have been fired. So you usually don't see that. Usually a championship winning coach sticks around for at least a couple years after they've won the title, just because they've proven their worth. Usually the teams and the players believe in them, and so the owners typically stick with the coaches. But let's see what ESPN had to say about everything. So here's the original. I think this was the first article that they put up. Ramona Shelburne, she actually wrote a more in-depth article about it, which we'll kind of go through, skim through. I'm not gonna go through every article word for word, just kind of want to get the gist of the story. But ESPN says Denver Nuggets shocked the NBA world by firing head coach Mike Malone and announcing they would not extend the contract of general manager Calvin Booth on Tuesday, with just 6 days left in the regular season. Wow, that's crazy. The Nuggets are only 2 years removed from winning the NBA championship, like we talked about, and are currently in 4th place in the Western Conference. They're on a 4-game losing streak, just like we just talked about. Let's see. It says it looks like the ESPN's basketball power index gives them 47% chance of falling into the play-in tournament. Then it goes on to say with the closing schedule that includes road games at the Sacramento Kings, the Rockets, with a home game against the Grizzlies. Just basically talked about how the change is surprising. And let's see. Again, like I talked about earlier, Memphis firing their coach on March 28th, which was about 2 weeks ago, or about a week ago, rather. See what else does it talk about here? NBA insiders. So this article is just talking about some NBA insiders and just getting their take, their kind of first thoughts about, how shocking it was to fire a championship winning coach a few days before the playoffs. So you got this guy here. I'm not even gonna lie, I don't know how to pronounce his name, so I'm not even gonna try. But he said it's shocking but not totally blindsiding. Change was probably inevitable, but the timing was a massive surprise. Tension had been brewing between Malone and Booth for quite some time, so much so that sources described it as a Cold War. Okay, so that's interesting. This is the first time, like I said, I haven't really had a lot of time to dig into this. The NBA, I've been soured on the NBA the last couple of years. It's just a bad product. Players make way too much money. They have way too much power. Adam Silver is such a horrible commissioner that he has no backbone. Players just run over him, and he acquiesces to every everything that the players want. And it's just bad overall. So, like I said, I haven't been really keeping up with the NBA and teams of that nature. But he says tension has been brewing for quite some time. It's like a cold war. So looks like the coach and the GM just haven't been seeing eye to eye for a while. Like they said, describe it as a cold war. Then he goes on to talk about the 4-game losing streak, how they have a losing record since the All-Star break, and even talks about how players such as Joker have displayed frustration on the sideline. Okay, so that's different because the Joker, a lot of times when you watch him play, the Joker just strikes me as a player who he just plays. Like he seems like the type of player they come to him with like some moves that they think might be good for the team. They come to get his input, and he's just like in his I just picture him in his funny accent where he goes like whatever you want to do, I'll do it. And I'm just here for the team. I'm here to do whatever, and I just want to win. That's all. So whatever you want to do, I'm for it. So that was my best Joker voice. So it looks like the players just seems like everybody has been frustrated with the coach. Um, and so I guess the owner, because he made the decision, decided that it's just best to go ahead and pull the trigger, pull the band-aid off the wound, and just go from there. See, Bobby Mark says he was stunned. He swore to himself that he would never use that word, especially after the Luka Doncic trade in February. Well, here we are 2 months later. Yes, there are rumblings that change was coming in Denver, but not just 6 days before the regular season. Yeah, that would make better sense. Like me personally, I don't see why they didn't just let him finish out the season and see what happens. Maybe they turn it around in the playoffs, and then they kind of reevaluate, see like, well, as far as the tension and things of that nature between the players and the GM, um, you know, if you win a championship or you make a deep playoff run where you make it to the conference finals or further, you would think that you would have a whole summer to work that out and to repair the relationship. But obviously, they didn't feel that way. And so, today, with right before the playoffs start, they decide to pull the plug. Again, it's strange, but you know, that's what they decided. Michael C. Wright says no different than Memphis firing Jenkins, the winningest coach in franchise history. It's ridiculous. Yeah, I agree with that. I do think it's definitely ridiculous as well. Again, like I said, I'm a fan of letting, if you're going to fire a head coach, I'm always a fan of doing it in the off season. That way, there's no disruption of what's going on during the season. The players aren't shell shocked. The players aren't forced to. What am I trying to say? The players aren't forced to kind of change their mindset and learn a new system, so to speak, on the fly. And then it also kind of, to a certain degree, alleviates their frustration in most cases because they may like the coach, may have a good rapport with the coach, and if you fire that coach during the season, the players are going to be looking like put their hands on their heads like what's going on. We thought we were building towards something here, but so I kind of agree with that. Then he says Denver is only 2 seasons removed from the only championship in franchise history, like we talked about. You diminish the Nuggets' chances. You diminish the Nuggets' chances of the second title by firing the coach who got you to the mountaintop. Yeah, I second everything this guy just said. So, and I got a couple other people down here giving their opinion, but let's see. Let's go to Ramona Shelburne's article. She's an NBA or ESPN reporter. She typically does some decent reporting. I'm not a huge fan of her writing. but sometimes she hits the nail on the coffin. Let's see. Looks like this was an old spring. Yeah. So not gonna get into that. And let's see what this article is about. Fire from the assistant. Okay, so the Dave Edelman, the Nuggets lead assistant, is going to take over for the remainder of the season. So I'd imagine that during the offseason, they'll take a look at some candidates and hire either a brand new head coach or, depending on how far this David Adelman can take them, and if the players believe in him and if the owner really likes him, they might just promote him to the head coaching job and just kind of see, what he does with it. But let's see, shocking decision. Here we kind of talked about that already. I don't want to rehash that. Another try to keep things together. Jamal Murray was out 5 straight games. That's another thing that was working against the coach. Jamal Murray, who's pretty much been injury prone his whole entire career, he's been in and out of the lineup all season. And it's widely known that, him and Joker, they play well together. So Joker hasn't had his second in command on the court, for a good amount of time this season. So I know that's got to be frustrating. We've had other players who've had injuries as well, like Michael Porter Jr. And KCP. I think he was injured. He plays he's a good shooter and a good defender for them. I think Aaron Gordon missed some time as well. So, it's not just the coach; it's the rotation. A lot of the the players who are a part of the main rotation, they haven't been available because of injury and other things. So it's kind of hard for players and teams to get into rhythm when they aren't playing together. Which that's beyond. I don't want to make excuses for the coach, but it can be kind of hard when you don't have all your horses in the race to go out every night and play your best. So let's see what else they say. So they said they entered the season with growing tension between Mike Malone and Calvin Booth. Like the other article said, grew into a Cold War. And this is another thing I heard. I have a friend who's a huge Nuggets fan. And, me and him texted a little bit about it today. And he was like, even though the firing was a shock to him and was a surprise, he was like, it may be a thing where the owner is trying to shock the system, shock the players into, stepping up and doing their best and trying to go as far as they can in the playoffs. And what he was saying was that, Mike Malone had become a bad coach. He told me how his rotations were horrible. He told me how last year in the playoffs, he should have used some younger players a lot more, like Christian Braun and Peyton Watson. He also talked about how he shrunk the rotation to he only used like a 7-man rotation, and the players were essentially tired towards the end of games, and that's why they bowed out early in the playoffs last year. It just was bad coaching by Mike Malone. Then my friend also talked about, like the articles before I mentioned, the growing tension between not just Mike Malone and the general manager, but also between Mike Malone and the players. He kind of felt like Mike Malone had lost the locker room and that the players just weren't responding to him like they were a few years ago when they won the championship. So he was like, he was taken aback by the firing. He didn't agree with it. He was agreeing with me. He felt like they should have waited until the end of the season and see what kind of playoff run they made and go from there. But he did also relay to me that he did feel like if they did not make a finals run or win the finals, he kind of figured that Mike Malone was on his last leg and that he would be fired during the off season. So, but yeah, it was a shocker. And yeah, that's my friend had to say about the things. But all the things that the articles kind of talk about, that's what he and I talked about as well. So he was kind of privy to things. So, but anyway, that's the video, man. Just kind of wanted to again talk about that real quick. Again, by the time this video comes out, everybody on YouTube and in the sports media would have already digested it, talked about it a million ways and not. But like I said, I'm new to this. I'm just getting into the reaction game. I'm trying to see what things are about, man, and just trying to find my place here on YouTube and bring some content to you guys. Again, the channel is called According to the Content. So, hey, according to the content, guy wasn't that good of a coach anymore. It seems like he had the players and general manager who weren't feeling him, had tension, et cetera, et cetera. So, hey, had to get him up out of here. But, appreciate you guys for listening and watching. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe. I'm trying to get my subscribers up. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to get into the algorithm, as I say on YouTube. Yeah, make a comment under the video, and I'm out. To the next one. Peace.